Good morning again. Hey, good morning. And any questions? Anything we should review or repeat what we did previous lecture?
What should we do to control infant mortality?
What?
What should we do to control infant
Oh, in an engineering sense, and yeah, the idea of infant mortality means is that production processes have lot of variability. So you can see if I make something, some parts are strong, some are not very strong. So if there's lot of variability, and then if I use them, then weak things will fail very fast. So the only way to improve and decrease infant mortality is to decrease the variability of production. So then all the quality principles we teach how to reduce production variability will also reduce infant mortality. If everything is equal, then there is no infant mortality. So the infant mortality is because some things are weak and some things are strong. So same thing like with human beings, some babies are weak and some are not weak, right? So then weak children will die very fast. They'll get infection and so on.
But we cannot control it at the last stage. At the last stage, the things will make it like the ages, like the businesses.
You mean at the end of the life? No, there is no notion. Oh, that is built in the design. So if I design some bridge, I use certain steel. I know how the steel is going to corrode and wear. So I design in wear out. Anytime you design something, your choices dictate when it will wear out. So it is all a function of design. You could have made it stronger and last longer, but you did not. It's a function of design. So right at the design stage, you can lengthen the life of the products. So like in India, if you say, oh, we are going to have electric cars, but then the battery life today may not be very good. But in USA, we have very expensive batteries, so they have a very long life. So you charge the battery and then you can drive for 500 or 600 kilometers without charging. But then it is more expensive. So it is a function of the design. Philosophically, everything is a function of the design. Just like we were talking before the break about the concentration of wealth. So somebody says, how good is Modi or how good is our system? So like 5 years ago, we could figure out what is the average and what is the median income in India. And then see in 5 years has this changed. If it hasn't changed, that means all this rhetoric, political rhetoric had no impact. And maybe it has even gotten worse than it was 5 years ago. So it is one thing, see what happens in a society is that if you don't understand the science or the mathematics and you don't have numbers, then you become very irrational and you are more emotional because you have no way to quantify things. So you just make statements for which there is no basis. So we are going to look at now lecture number 4. So this, you can see that in every lecture we review what we do before so that hopefully you can understand some concepts and you can integrate these concepts. Because the objective is not to teach you mathematics that you can, that takes 2 years of study in a PhD to learn. But hopefully you can understand some philosophies, some concepts, and how to implement them. So lecture 4 is like how we synthesize reliability, robustness, and resilience. In lecture number 3, we talked about a little bit about reliability, but then we want to say how all of it is interrelated. And a lot of these slides are, we have shown you, there may be some examples that are new. So that way you can build up your knowledge. In teaching, you have to learn something many times before it makes sense. Like to learn probability, you may have to take a course, different courses 3-4 times before you truly understand that. So remember, like we gave you motivation. So it says that the traditional field of reliability, maintainability, so the objective is to take it to the next level so that it has greater effectiveness and impact on our society and quality of life. So like in India, question is how much of these ideas they use. And if there are very few companies or very few organizations that use it, then shows there will be a problem, right, in the future. So some companies, international companies, may use these ideas. So like if there is a GE in Bangalore, they may have some engineers who can execute and implement these kind of ideas. But many other companies may not either, because they don't have trained people, so they may not be able to execute these ideas. And we talked about systems. So I think on Monday, you are not able to see these kind of slides. So system of systems, like electric power. So you can see India is probably one of the few countries where you have so much outage of power. There are very few other countries in the world where these things happen, that every day, couple of times, electric power goes away. So typically, in most of the cities in the United States, it will be rare, unless there is a natural disaster, it would be rare that maybe in a year for 10 seconds or 2 hours, worst case, you may lose power. And it's always there. So then like healthcare, even government is a system, food supply, financial services, emergency services, business, how you support buildings and utilities and transportation. So you can see you can apply a lot of these ideas to any system. And the basic idea is the same, how reliable our healthcare system is. So same kind of mathematics I can use to understand effectiveness of healthcare. So in healthcare, we could say we have intervention, how many people die because of lack of healthcare, or how many diseases are there, how can we prevent these diseases. So in any system, you can apply these ideas. And then we talked about that if there is, like in the United States, there's a hurricanes, then power will go out. But then the question is how long it will take to bring back the power. So if something is very resilient, then I can recover very, very fast. For me to be resilient, I have to plan for it, design for it. I have to have a lot of maintenance people, facilities, training, and on and on. Things just automatically don't happen, right? You have to plan for it. You cannot just hope or pray to God something good will happen tomorrow. I think we have enough understanding of causation. If we don't do something, there is no divine intervention, at least in a scientific sense, that will make good things to happen. You understand that? I know in India that is hard to understand, because they'll say God will make a lot of things good tomorrow. But only engineers can do things to prevent bad things from happening. And maybe we are stuck with traditional thinking, but at least maybe there is a divine power, but question is, what is the role of the engineer? So that's what we are focusing on. And there is always, this is like man-made disaster, this is like flooding, and so on and on. So like in government of United States, now like homeland security. In India, like we have some homeland security. What's the word they use in India for national security? What's the word they use?
NDRF.
What does that mean?
Disaster relief.
Oh, okay, yeah. So you have many this, plus you have maybe a group in India that focuses on terrorism and so on. So a lot of these courses, like in United States, for the last 30, 40 years, I teach seminars for Department of Defense, like U.S. Air Force. A week ago, I was at an Air Force base and then teach engineers how to make things safe and reliable. So we were looking at 3 R's. So in this course, we're just emphasizing 3 R's, like 3 R's of education: reliability, resilience, and robustness. So I think by this time you have a good feeling what is reliability, what is robustness, and what is resilience, right? So we mentioned is this red area reflects, you could integrate over a certain period of time, and then you could say total area, if everything is perfect, then it is 100 times T0. But if there is any degradation and you're not able to recover, then this area A has gone down. So how good something is, you can then numerically calculate it. So you could say in India, how effective is any program, national program, to improve quality of life. And I think we talked quite a bit about quality word. So I think hopefully these slides, if you see them 10 times, they will stay with you. So that is the basic idea. And we learned is that the hardest thing in quality is how you substitute the requirements of the customer. And that idea is true in any society. So if there are millions and millions of people, they think one way, but public policy, government thinks in another way. Government is doing one thing, people want something else. So that means there is no good match. So sometimes we say that it is very, very important how you substitute. This word is substitute. So that means what your needs are, how I'm substituting. So you could look at that example. You have certain need to learn. Let's hope that you want to learn. But I'm trying to substitute it by these slides. But maybe these slides are a very bad substitute, right? If I don't really understand how you learn, then I'm not doing a good job because my substitute is wrong. What I'm emphasizing is not relevant to you. And that is a very hard process, how to talk to the user, the customer, and then develop the right substitutes. Because every person in the company develops these substitutes. And this morning we talked about reliability, we talked about maintainability this morning, then we showed this slide before. We talked a lot about robustness. Robustness, like of biological system, is whether it's just a question of belief systems. Maybe in India, you think most of the people believe in evolution. Yes, no. Anybody, you guys want to say? Or you're afraid to say something? You understand what my question? You understand the word evolution? What is it? I'm sorry? Evolution? Evolution? Huh?
Change which comes over time.
Yeah, so how do people come? Where do they come from in this world? How did life start? So these are very deeper questions. And the question is, so in Western society, at least in whether it's true or not, we don't know. But the model is that from very, very basic building blocks of matter, we are able to evolve to where we are today. And that evolution has taken billions of years. So in Western society, the idea is that universe, we don't know, but this is just a theoretical construct, or we say this is the hypothesis. It was created 16 billion years ago, and then solar system is only 4 billion years, right? And then Earth created maybe 3.5 some billion years, and then during that time, slowly things happened, right? So that's the idea. So it has taken billions of years for things to evolve. And then the new idea in science now is to say how things have evolved. And then nature tends to be very, very good. Like your brain, and there is no scientist today who can make a computer that is as good as your brain, right? But then we can learn how does brain work. So lot of computers, 100 years from today, they won't be like this. They would be all chemical, just like our brain, right? And there'll be different cells, and then you can develop brains which are just like function like our physical brain. So the whole idea is that how you learn from, and nature evolves. So just like I evolved, all of you evolved. So I became less robust by moving away from one environment. So anytime there is no reason for my body to worry about bacteria, my body says, why waste time to focus on this bacteria? I want to do something else. And evolution sense, body sense, they tend to be very, very efficient. If something is not needed, it slowly disappears, right? Because there's no utility for that. So this is the idea that then we could say, it says we can learn from biological system how they achieve robustness. So in human body, we have lot of positive and negative feedback loops. Then we have redundancy, right? How much redundancy is there? So you could say, I want to see, but you have 2 eyes, you have 2 ears. For anything, for some things, there are millions of people things that are extra. So there's a tremendous amount of redundancy in the system. So degeneracy means that you can use multiple means to achieve the same function, right? So supposing I become blind, then other senses take over. So I can use my hearing and my touch and my smell to walk around. So we have tremendous ability to adapt so that we can still do the same function. If you know spider, you have seen spider on the wall. So if you look at spider web and how they make web and the material, it is 100 times has more tensile strength than any material, any steel that human beings can make. You can see a tiny dot, spider can stretch it to 50 feet and web it, just a tiny speck. And it is 100 times, it has more tensile strength than any man-made material. So how could a spider design material that has such a strong tensile strength? And number 2, it is biodegradable. So like our material, you have lot of scrap, then it is polluting the environment. All the junk is lying somewhere in India, right? Somewhere. And it is polluting, corroding, doing lot of... But spider web, you can eat it back and recycle it. So that's such an amazing thing. We have a couple of professors in our university, then all they do is study spiders. And then our hope is that maybe 50 years from today, we can learn how to make this cell. And then it has tremendous consequences. So how to develop what we call as biological material. But it has tremendous benefits in terms of health care. So like learning how to regrow organs and how to make new cells when people are sick. So there are tremendous opportunities to do that. So the idea is we can learn a lot from nature. But you have to believe in nature. It depends on what you believe in. So if somebody doesn't believe in nature, then of course in your society you won't focus on doing these things. You'll be focused on doing something else. Right? So we talked a little bit about resilience, and then we also said later we'll talk about there are 3 R's, but there are also many S's. So S's is like security, sustainability, safety, and on and on. So a lot of these things impact overall quality of life in this society. Then somebody says, oh, what's the difference between security and safety? So each word has a very different meaning. And then as an engineer, as a manager, as an executive, we can figure out how to define these words, how to develop a mathematical equation for these words, and then how to communicate that information to other people. Because if you cannot quantify these things, then you cannot communicate. So like maintainability, resilience are a very small part of sustainability. So remember, like sustainability is a lot broader issue. So like we are saying today is that if we keep on polluting the environment, like with auto emissions today, after 50 years we won't be able to live in India. You cannot sustain burning these fuels, right? It is hard to sustain. Next week, if there is Diwali, right, there's a lot of pollution, and if so you cannot sustain Diwali long term. Very soon, somebody will come up with rules, and they say you can't burn things and no fireworks and on, because this is something that is not sustainable. That's the weakness of culture, yeah. So that's why we talked this morning. So if you get stuck with the belief and you're not willing to change your belief, then we cannot help you. Right? Yesterday we talked about the definition of not so smart person who keeps on doing the same thing, but you expect different result. So it's simple science like physics, cause and effect, action and reaction. So if you don't change something, how can something wonderful happen tomorrow, right? That will be, that is something not in the realm of science, maybe that is in the realm of faith or something else. But that is, as a scientist, we don't understand it, right? But as a scientist, we can only focus on cause and effect, which can be empirically quantified, so that you can fundamentally learn how to change systems. So I think we talked about why feedback is bad, right? Yesterday. So what were other words that we used? Diagnostics, and then the better than diagnostic is prognostics, and then better than prognostics is feed forward. So that means you are able to change the input to prevent bad things from happening. You don't have to have bad things and then give feedback. Then it is too late, because feedback by definition has a delay. So that's why we don't focus on inspection and audits Those are very primitive ideas in any society. So like in India, typically happens is a lower level you are in development, more emphasis is on audits. You know the word audit? What does that mean? Audit, maybe my language may be different than how you guys think. What is audit? A-U-D-I-T, audit. Huh? No, audit. Just like somebody comes to this university and they audit it, they say, yeah, whether they are doing the, yeah. So lower you are, one way societies manage the system is to do lot of audits and lot of inspection, and then to make sure, because the reason you do audit is because you don't trust people. So I say, if I cannot trust you, I have to measure the output, right? So just like in India, they do that still, like some of your PhD student maybe. So if you write a PhD thesis, our local system says, oh, we need somebody from outside to evaluate it. But why did you need somebody from outside to evaluate? How come you cannot trust the local professor to say it is a good thesis? The very fact that you do that is because you have not a good system and you don't trust people and you think your professors may deceive somebody, right? Then you cannot have good educational system. You are always worried about that local people are no good. Let's make sure to prevent bad things from happening. So you'll find in this world, like academic advisor in Hong Kong, in Germany, in America. Even in America, each university, higher university is, no audit. So like when I was at Berkeley, you write a thesis, you're my professor, I give it to you, you sign it, I walk out. Nobody, there's no exam, there is nothing. Because the idea is that you hire the best people and then we give them the power. With audits, lot of time is wasted and it is already too late. And then all people have to do is change slightly the system on the day of the audit so that they can pass the audit, right? But philosophically, they don't change the system. So anywhere you go, if there are a lot of cops, like police, is quality of life good or bad in that city? First question you ask is, like if I go to Delhi, or if I come to Sonipat, and there are police everywhere, that shows there is a problem in this community, so you need police. I would rather go to a city that doesn't have police, right? That means there is no crime, there is no fear, and I don't need police to start with. So the idea is to reach, not like in India and many societies, they say we need more police, we need more police. They are always looking for more police and more jails. So the idea is they are saying our system is bad, we have bad people, we'll put them in jail, and then we'll get them out of the society and we'll be able to improve. But nobody is saying fundamentally how to change people so that there is no need for police. There is no need for audit. So many universities, we say as a professor, who am I to judge you as a student, right? So many universities don't even give grades. Grades create a lot of fear in students. And then the only thing you focus on is getting a good grade. You're not focused on learning and education. So if I teach something like I'm doing now, this, what I'm saying now, will never be on any exam. But maybe the most important thing. And you will say, this professor is nonsense. He's talking about things that will never improve my grades. So why listen? Why waste my energy to listen to this person? So then teachers will only teach what is on an exam. You can see no exam can teach you how to be a good person, good citizen, good future leader in our society. I can only test you on simple mathematics and science and so on, but I cannot really test you about your ethics and what your inner beliefs are and how you think. So if you go to like a university and they have, like in India, how much emphasis is on central exams, like there's one exam for all the students. So that means the universities, higher level, they don't trust the local school. And they say, you teach and then we'll evaluate you. So our model is that as a teacher, I'm the only person who decide whether you learn something or not. Who else can decide, right? Suppose I'm teaching you here or what I just taught you here. Who in this university can decide whether that is good and bad? It's you, because the other people don't even know what I taught you. So the idea is that if as a teacher in our American system, if you give a grade, nobody in the world can change it. Principal or the president of the university or president of the United States, nobody can change it. There's such a tremendous power in the teacher. So then the basic idea is now there's a tremendous pressure. Make sure you hire the best people. Of course, if you don't hire best people, now you'll be stuck in audits and checking and checking and checking and checking. What you do, there are 3 other people who will check what you did. So that is what is fundamentally flawed in doing feedback and inspection. So the idea is that rather than inspecting the output, like we learned yesterday, you inspect the input. You inspect the input. So if I was going to evaluate your university, I'll figure out how do you hire professors, right? And if I say that process is flawed, I don't have to say you have problem, because 10 years from today you'll have problems, right? And I'll say, what is the education of these professors and how they were mentored? So you slowly evolve a system. It may take 10 years, 50 years to figure out how to fundamentally change the system. But if I don't do that, then I'll be stuck in hiring and firing and telling people they are no good, evaluating them, then hiring outside experts to come and do something in your university. So in the United States, a long time back, we said this is garbage for a PhD thesis to be evaluated by somebody else, right? So we never do that. Of course, if you're a good student, you will publish a paper, right? And then paper is in international journals that is reviewed. So you have a lot of feedback. Say that whether you did good work or whether your work that you're doing has impact on society. Make sense? So even in Hong Kong, I think system, old British system was flawed. They emphasized a lot of, auditing and evaluating what research is. So these days, like we focus on, if you do research, I think, like I said, professor, we look at citation index. So like if I write a paper and nobody in this world reads it, just because I wrote a paper, somebody says, oh, what good is it? That I had zero impact on society by writing a paper, right? So then just because you write 100 papers, but it has no impact, there's no reason to promote you because impact is not there. But if I write a simple paper or if I give a simple talk and then there are 100 people or 1,000 people or 1,000,000 people who talk about what we did and who refer to what we did and who, when they do research, build it based on what we did, then you get promoted or rewarded. So you can develop a lot of metrics that deal with the future, not today. So because for citations to happen, it may take 10 years, right? For the research to have some impact on society. So it is not something based on favoritism or just because somebody is your friend and your friend evaluated somebody's thesis. So you want to focus on fundamentally designing the system. So the best way is to understand input and output. So I say most important thing in any university is the quality of faculty. Faculty means professors, right? That's the one input in this system. So if you don't focus on that, then you'll be stuck on checking. Then their students will do theses. People will say the theses are no good. It will take 2 years to evaluate the thesis. They'll go to one reviewer, then go to second reviewer, and that is not a good system. And many times typically if there are exams, then how do you decide what should be on the exam? So what you put on the exam, on a central exam, is something that is what we call as the lowest common denominator. That our hope is every teacher in India has taught it, so the student can answer it, right? So that cannot be a good system. So you can see, based on one simple slide, you can learn how to improve quality of education in India. Very simple conceptual model, and it says how to improve the quality of life. What is wrong with standardized tests? We do so much standardized tests, and fundamentally what is wrong with the standardized test? And then teaching students just about standardized tests, and not teaching them about basic values and critical thinking and ethical behavior and on and on. That makes sense or no? So you think you can change in India? Or you have given up? And you can change. How will you change? No, I'm very happy you say that. And I'm just kind of provoking you. How will you change? So that was the idea we learned, is that the word prognostic, we use it in medicine. So it said there is a unknown things, there is a disturbance, but as you learn more about disturbance, then as the disturbance is changing, then you change the input. So as conditions are changing, I design my system to work in one way, and as the conditions change, I make the changes in the system. So that's the basic idea, and that is consistent with adaptation and with learning and evolution. So in evolution, as environment changes, then your system gets changed, because now you have to adapt to live in the new conditions, in the new environment. But in real life, so this word is very, very important. This is what we call as informative disturbance. So there are a lot of things which we have no control over, but we understand that if these things change, how they will affect the system. I can understand that. So like if I have any electronic device, old days, and if the operating condition like temperature changes in the locally, then the failure rate will be very high. So then people will say, oh, old days was, we could say, if you buy computers, then we have a huge computer room, and then we air condition the room. Otherwise, computers won't work very well. Then we said that is not so good thing, but now we can design computer systems that won't need air-conditioned room to work. But still, there's a limit how much you can design today. So anytime you have a complex system, like you put a device in an airplane or in a submarine or in a power plant, and there's a limit how much you can make it robust against operating conditions. So you will still try to manage or control the operating conditions. I think we talked about this idea that don't do inspection. So if you do inspection, you inspect the grinding wheel. Because so typically what we do today is when we design machines, we have hundreds of sensors. So machines are monitoring themselves. We don't monitor the output of the machine. We monitor the internal behavior. So you could monitor wear of the tool, you could monitor rate of flow of the coolant, and on and on. You could monitor what kind of material that you're getting from the grinding wheel and how it is changing. That way you could figure out at what rate the grinding wheel will be changing in the future. So you more focus on, there is a concept, I think you have heard of IoT, Internet of Things. Yeah. So now the idea is that we have sensors everywhere. We have billions and billions of sensors, and then we are collecting so much data. And then first idea is to develop a technology so that everything can communicate with everything. And then the second thing is how all the data that we are collecting, how to get useful information from it. How to get useful information. So you can see technology can have a tremendous impact. So like if you have a car, you have a cruise control. So supposing cruise controls is designed to work on a flat road. But if the cruise control doesn't understand if the road has a slope, then of course car will accelerate faster. But then the car I can put a sensor. The sensor in the car can sense there is a slope, and then the cruise control can compensate for the slope. So that way you never have to worry about anything. So today, at least in the United States, if you buy a new, high-tech car, there may be about 100 sensors in it. Everywhere, if you look at the bumper, there may be 20 sensors, and it is monitoring everything. So that's the idea, that you can then evolve it to a level where cars don't need drivers. So our hope is that in future, cars can, pardon? Automatic parking is very common. So that technology is available already. So now the question is that in future we'll have cars. So you get in the car and you go to sleep, and then it will take you to your destination, and then you can get up. So that's the idea. So all of that is possible based on simple thinking about being proactive and understanding the causation and then redesigning the system. It cannot happen by itself, but it can only happen if I engineer it, and if I understand the disturbances, and if I compensate for the disturbances. So the idea is that we have feed-forward prognostics, diagnostics, and worst thing to do is feedback. And typically we say, how did you evaluate societies? So any society that is all dependent on feedback, you say it's not good. So the question is, how did you make year by year by year progress so that you are more focused on feed-forward rather than on feedback? So you could evaluate societies. So like yesterday, people talked about quality and meeting specifications and standards. So we typically say that specifications and standards are for backward people. If I'm a leader, I don't need standards or specification. Only people. Why do we make specification? Because you say, make something at this target, I give you a band to tell you how much variability. But why do I give you a band? Because I know that you are not very good. And but the idea is that it is my responsibility that how to make things at the target. And if you give me a band, I'll make things here, 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 all over the band. But I don't make them on the target. Learning how to hit ideals is very different than learning how to make things within specifications. So psychologically, philosophically, that changes the culture of the organization and ultimately in society. So the idea is that if you are a leader, my job is to set standards for other people to follow. You don't need to give me standards and say behave this way, right? If you say I'm not very smart, I'll just say, oh, tell me whether I should sit or whether I should stand. I said, that's something you can decide yourself. But if you're not smart, you'll say, tell me what to do and I'll do it. So that is a reflection of the society, that people have given up thinking and they want somebody else to tell them what to do. Right? Is that good? What you think? Is that good? People don't want to take responsibility. They say, tell us what to do and we'll do it. But the question is, how fast are we changing, or are we changing at all? Are we getting worse than before? Very low, yeah. In some cases could be worse than before. So I think yesterday we talked about these are all the limitations, and then how to eliminate barriers and so on. So remember, one of the focus was that people look at the word failure, right? Failure is a binary thing, but there is nothing like failure in life or for a fault, right? It is just a question of degradation, and every person has a different threshold for failure. So I'm just trying to go through, not technically, so like this slide says, what is a failure? And we don't look at complement of failure is success, right? That's very simplistic thinking. And yesterday I talked about multi-state logic. And then what was the other concept we talked about yesterday? Multi-state, and then the concept of fuzzy logic, yeah. So where things are not very, nothing is precise, right? So anytime you use language, it's not very precise. So like we looked at the example of age, like old. Somebody says, somebody's old, somebody's young. So what does it mean, right? What is success? What is failure? What does it mean? So they are all very, very imprecise. Words by definition are very imprecise. So then the question is, how can we change our mathematics that is more consistent with imprecise logic? So if you look at brain doesn't work the way we teach the mathematics. It's a very different way the brain uses probability and statistics and adapts and learns than what we teach. So there's a huge gap. So in future, then when people talk about artificial intelligence, so then the question is, how do you develop or evolve new kind of mathematics that will be able to deal with intelligence? So that's some of the motivation. So like throughout my career, we did a lot of work on multi-state systems rather than binary systems. We don't look at the word success and failure, but we more focus on there are many states. So just like in teaching, you don't say pass and fail, we make it better, we give A, B, C, D, E, or we can make it better. Rather than giving A, B, C, we could give you a percentage. So percentage is theoretically more continuous than discrete, right? Pass-fail is binary, that is very discrete. ABC is multi-state. So ABC, somebody says, oh, how do I get an A? Somebody says you should get 90 plus. If you get 89, you don't get A. But if you get 90 or 91, you get A. But then you are very unhappy. And there is no difference between 90 and 89. Because the day you had the exam, maybe you didn't sleep well, and suddenly your grade is 89. and now you have to suffer for the rest of your life because you couldn't get admission. So you can see that is so wrong to subject students or people in society to these models. And the harm that it does to society is enormous. But we are so stuck in this kind of thinking. Make sense? How many students, you know, even in US, maybe more in Japan and Korea, and probably, I don't know the statistics in India, who commit suicide. You know, in India probably they don't create those statistics sometimes. If something bad happens, the tendency for the administration would be to hide that information. Right? Is that true? Because you don't want bad publicity. Who wants bad publicity, right? But we know what is happening in society. But so if you don't recognize it and admit it, then you don't know what to improve. Because if I come here and I say, in your educational system, what are the weaknesses, they will never tell me anything that is wrong in this system. Because they can't tell me, because they are not even collecting the data, because they hide it in this system. So we talked about, you know, continuum of states of the system. So then we can, this is beyond, that means you have to learn stochastic processes and Markov processes. Some of you at the PhD level may take courses on, you know, stochastic. What is the difference between stochastic and probabilistic? You heard that word stochastic? No, nobody. That's okay then. So stochastic means dynamic probability. That means the probabilities are changing with the time. Yeah, that's it. So then, like if I have a system, it is not 0 or 1, but system can have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, m, and then suddenly from good state it could completely fail, or it could just degrade to the next state and the next state and the next state. So these models can become very, very complex. Then for each transition there is a probability model, and then somebody says, what is the MTBF of this system if there is a one number? So that can involve a lot of mathematics, how to do that. So then we could develop distributions, and then we could analyze the data. So for example, if you have a tool, then a lot of these ideas, this tool is varying with time, right? So then somebody says, I give you two tools, one wears in one way, one wears in other way. So there's a huge difference in these two tools. So then how I can capture the total life of the tool, and then how it affects the outcome of the quality of the process. So if more sophisticated models have, then I can get very good quantification of which tool to buy. So that's the basic idea. So then if I have a tool type 1, tool type 2, tool type 3, then I can do all the mathematical calculations, and then I can decide how these tools are varying with respect to time. So like there is tool 1 and tool 2 and tool 3, but then question is, which is a good tool? So it's not easy just looking at the figure and saying which is a good tool. So like say, if you compare tool 1 and tool 2, a tool 1 in the beginning is better, but then it suddenly degrades very fast. But tool 2 starts degrading right away, but then at the end it is still better than tool 1. So anytime you have a continuum, then the old trick in math is that you integrate it. The word integration or synthesis is the same thing. So that means you add everything together and then quantify it. So that's the basic idea. You can apply the same idea to healthcare. So like you have a patient, worst state is death, and then you could say you have cancer. So cancer level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. So like this is, and then we can make a model if somebody has level 4, then how they go to level 3 and level 2 and level 1. Some people, cancer may be very aggressive. So it can suddenly, you can die very fast. Within 1 year you could die, but some people may die after 10 years. Then each intervention will affect human being in a lot of different ways. So this way then we can evaluate the quality of life or overall quality of performance of the system. So here we talk about that if something was binary and my system degree of availability from 0 to 5, so if this is how the degree of availability is changing, but I say anything more than 3 is available, anything less than 3 is unavailable. So you can see I've lost a lot of information. Then I could say, oh, system was available from 0 to 80, then from 80 to 100, it was not available, then it was always available from 100 to 180. But there is so much information how this system is degrading. And unless you capture that, you cannot fundamentally learn how to improve the system. So the purpose of science always is to understand more and more and more about causation and then make models at the lowest level of detail. So this is kind of a summary of what we covered. So we say that we have to extend a lot of our thinking and we have to understand the limitations and the barriers of traditional definitions of quality in terms of specifications and standards. And then we have to relate quality, like we talked yesterday, to reliability. So reliability is one of the qualities of the system, right? If I buy a product and it doesn't do what it says it's supposed to do, nobody will say it's a quality product, right away. So reliability is important, resilience is important, robustness is important, cost is important, and on and on. Psychologically, I have very different way of thinking. So I may like this design, you may not like this design. And then this slide shows that how we'll have a separate lecture on fuzzy thinking. So this says that somebody says what is hot and what is cold. So you can see typical idea would be is I could say, oh, there's a certain temperature, less than this temperature is cold, more than this temperature is hot. Then I could say, now I could say hot, warm, and cold. So I have 3 categories, right? Or hot, warm, or lukewarm, and then cold. Or then I say if something is cold here, but cold is not binary. It doesn't mean this side is cold and this side is warm. So there is a continuous degradation. So fuzzy logic tries to quantify the degree of uncertainty that we have in our thinking. So this was developed by, we mentioned professor at Berkeley. His name was, he was originally from Iran, and his name was Zadeh, Z-A-D-E-H. And he just died 3 weeks ago. He was 92 years old, and he died. And then I think based on his one paper, today there are probably 100 journals where you can publish research related to fuzzy logic. And you can apply this to anywhere. This is basic way of thinking, and then basic mathematics, basic manipulations, and then one can apply it to anywhere. Any questions before we can go to tutorial? One more lecture. We could stop for 5 minutes. You don't have to go if you go to bathroom, but not go away for half an hour, okay? So let's take a 5-minute break.